A Majestic Bird enclosure is the perfect combination of durable interior materials like anodized aluminum, laminate panels, acrylic, crimp-locked stainless steel mesh, and a beautiful custom wood exterior. This video will demonstrate the assembly steps for a single unit Majestic Bird cage with a laminate back panel, stand, and hood. The assembly instructions that arrive with your enclosure will refer specific steps with specific sections of this video. We suggest watching the video in its entirety before starting to assemble the cage. Then start the video again and watch each section just before completing that step in assembly. All of the parts for your cage are listed in the instructions. Please use the invoice for an inventory of accessories. These are the parts specific to your cage. Cage side panel. The side vertical walls of the cage with the aluminum on the interior side. Front door panel. The vertical front wall of the cage that will swing on hinges with aluminum on the interior side. Laminate back panel. Laminate panel with no aluminum on either side. Top panel. An aluminum frame surrounding the panel material. Floor panel. This panel will sit in the bottom of the cage if your cage does not have a pull-out floor and tray system. Stand. Pre-assembled wooden cabinet or stand that the cage will sit on top of. Hood. Pre-assembled wood hood that will sit on top of the cage. Pan head screws. These are the hardware that will hold the cage together. T-nut. This will be used with one of the pan head screws to secure the back of the enclosure. Wood finish plug to cover the countersunk screw holes in the front of the enclosure. The only tool that is necessary to assemble the enclosure is a medium-tip Phillips head screwdriver. Your Majestic Bird enclosure will arrive in a large wooden crate. A power screwdriver or drill with a Phillips head bit and a square drive bit, and a hammer or crowbar will be helpful for opening and dismantling the crate. A step ladder will be helpful, especially for taller enclosures. If your enclosure includes a pull-out floor and tray system, your cage will not have a floor panel. All accessories will be installed after the cage is fully assembled, so they will not be included in this video. Refer to the specific instructions for each accessory on how to install them. The complete cage will be heavy and may not be easy to move, so build the cage in or very near its final location. You will need access to the back of the cage during assembly and to be able to walk around it, so you will probably need to slide the completed cage into place when it's finished. If the cage's final location will be a hardwood floor or other surface that can be scratched, we recommend adhering heavy-duty self-stick felt pads to the bottom of the stand, or using furniture moving discs to prevent damaging the floor when sliding the cage. The hardware screws that will hold the cage together are stainless steel with fine threads. Therefore, we advise using only a handheld screwdriver to install the screws. Using a power drill or screwdriver can overheat or over-tighten the screws. There will be several places in the instructions that say do not tighten the screws. It is important the panels of the cage be able to move slightly during the assembly process, and over-tightening the screws will prevent all the parts from fitting together perfectly. Once all the panels are in place, all the screws will be tightened. Until the final tightening, leave the screws loose. 2 people are needed for some of the assembly steps. especially when the front and side panels are joined together, so that one person can hold the parts in position while the other person installs the screws. Your Majestic enclosure will arrive in a crate built onto a pallet and will be delivered by a truck, usually with a lift gate. The truck driver's obligation is to get the crate onto the ground, and he is not required to roll the crate off of the street, though most drivers will help you if possible. You will want to have at least one other person on hand when the crate arrives to help you open the shipment quickly and move it into your building. It is very, very important that you inspect the contents before you sign the delivery paperwork. Truck drivers are accustomed to people taking time to open crates, but please be prepared to inspect the shipment when it arrives. Inspect the exterior of the crate for signs of damage. There should not be any holes in the sides of the crate. The edges and corners should not be broken. There should be angled boards on top of the crate, which were put there to prevent the shipping company from stacking other crates on top. If there is anything wrong with the exterior of the crate, shoot some photos and describe the problems in writing. Remove at least 2 of the adjacent sides of the crate. A power drill or screwdriver with a Phillips head bit will make the job of removing the plywood faster. Inspect the contents of the crate. Everything should be securely strapped into place and have cushioning materials on all corners and edges. If there is any sign of damage, shoot photos, describe the damage in writing, close up the crate, and tell the driver that you are going to refuse delivery. The equipment and crate left the custom cage's warehouse in perfect condition. Damage is the fault of the shipper. If you accept delivery, we will not be able to get the shipper to pay for the damage. Do not accept a damaged shipment. Find the paperwork in the shipment. It may be in a plastic bag that also includes all the small hardware pieces. The paperwork will include the invoice and assembly instructions. The parts list is at the beginning of the instructions. Carefully unpack the shipping crate using scissors or a utility knife to cut the straps and plastic wrap holding the cage parts in place. Do not remove the packing materials around each part so they can stay in good condition until it is time to assemble the cage. A power drill or screwdriver with a square drive bit may be necessary to remove the internal skeleton of the crate to get to all the parts, especially stands and hoods which are fully assembled. Lay all the parts out where you can identify and count them. Note that if your cage has a pull-out tray and/or pull-out floor, a removable divider, or other accessories that will require assembly, the parts list for those accessories are on the instruction sets for those specific accessories. Accessories such as feeding and watering systems, perches, lights, etc. will be listed on the invoice, not in a set of instructions. Make a complete inventory of the parts. If any part of a cage is missing, call customer service right away so that the part can be sent as soon as possible. Do not attempt to build a cage when parts are missing. Before you start to assemble the cage, familiarize yourself with the different parts, what they are used for, and when you will need them in the assembly process. Place the stand as close to the final position of the cage as you can with enough room to walk behind it. We suggest placing heavy-duty moving pads under the bottom corners of the stand so that it will be easy to slide the cage during assembly and final positioning. Set the front panel with the door into the front edge of the stand with the aluminum side inside the cage and the hinges of the door on the left side when facing the front of the cage. One person will need to hold this front panel in this vertical position. Set one side panel on the stand adjacent to the front panel with the aluminum facing into the cage and the thin groove running the height of the panel at the back. Insert 1-inch long panhead screws into the exposed countersunk holes in the face of the front door panel to loosely attach the front panel to the side panel. The hole in the bottom corner of the front panel is not accessible and does not get a screw. Do not completely tighten the screws. Insert 1-inch long panhead screws into the holes in the bottoms of the installed side and front panels and loosely get them started into the threaded inserts in the molding of the stand. Do not completely tighten the screws. At this point, the installed front and side panels will stand without additional support. Orient the laminated back panel with the photo inside the cage and carefully seat the back panel into the groove in the top of the back edge of the stand and into the groove on the back side of the side panel already installed. Position the remaining side panel by very carefully aligning the bottom of its groove with the edge of the back panel, then tilting the side panel into a vertical position and letting it set on top of the stand. Secure the front and second side panels together with stainless steel screws. The bottom corner will not get a screw. Do not completely tighten the screws. Open the door of the cage to access the inside of the side panel. Insert 1-inch long panhead screws into the holes in the bottom of the side and loosely get them started into the threaded inserts in the molding of the stand. Do not completely tighten the screws. The top panel of the cage has a pre-assembled aluminum frame around a wire mesh panel. The panel frame will set down into the top of the cage and be secured in place by short silver screws. There will be a single hole at the back center of the top panel frame. Orient the top panel so that the back of the panel is toward the back of the cage. The rim of the top panel frame should rest on the top edges of the cage panels. The top panel is secured to the top of the back panel with a screw into a T-nut inserted from the back of the cage. Insert a short panhead screw into the T-nut from inside the top panel. Look at the remaining holes in the top panel. Some holes will line up with holes in the vertical panels. Other holes will line up with threaded inserts embedded in the walls of the vertical panels. Use short panhead screws to loosely connect the top panel into the threaded inserts. Do not completely tighten the screws. If your cage does not have a pull-out floor or tray system, the cage will have a floor panel. Open the front door of the cage and tighten each of the screws securing the bottoms of the front and side panels to the molding of the stand. Hand tight is tight enough. Set the floor panel into the bottom of the cage through the open door. It will rest on the inside lip of the stand. It may be helpful to support the bottom of the floor panel from underneath as it is being lowered into position. There will be no screws in the floor panel. There is a lip inside the bottom edge of the hood that will rest on the top edge of the cage over the rim of the top panel. It is best if two people lift the hood and carefully set it on top of the cage. There are some remaining holes in the top of the cage that pass through the top panel frame, the wall panels, and into threaded inserts in the hood. Insert screws through those holes and get them started into the threaded inserts in the hood. Get all the screws started before tightening any of them completely. Starting with the screws that secure the top panel to the top of the wall panels, tighten each screw until it is just hand tight. There is no need to over-tighten the screws, which can damage the cage. Next, Tighten the screws at the bottom of the wall panels inside the cage that secure the cage to the top of the stand. Hand tight is tight enough. Tighten the screws on the front of the cage that secure the front panel to the side panels. Hand tight only. The last task is to install the wood finishing plugs in the front of the cage to cover the screw holes. No glue is needed. The enclosure assembly is complete, and now you can install accessories. If your cage has both a floor tray system and a removable divider, install the floor tray system first.